Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing for you guys today is 50 Shades of Grey, or as I like to call it, 50 Shades of Sex. And I am so happy that I finally got around to finishing this book, because I honestly did not think that I would finish it. I was on the verge of just putting it down and not reading it ever again. There were so many points throughout this story where I wanted to throw this book up against my wall because I just hated it and I wanted to stop reading it, but I made it a point to finish reading this book because I didn't want to put it down like I had so many other books, and I finally got around to finishing it. It was a struggle, I won't lie. It was very difficult for me to finish this book, but I did it. So today I'm going to be giving you guys a book review on this guy. So for those of you guys who are not familiar with this book, which I honestly can't even imagine anyone out there that hasn't heard of this book, my own husband has heard of this book, and he's not into erotic books, and this is kind of what kind of seems like a chick kind of book, so he's not into those kind of things, and he even knew what this book was about. Like, there was so much hype around this book that I think everybody knew about this book or had read it already. And so for those of you guys who don't know what it's about, it is about this girl named Anastasia Steele and this guy named Christian Grey. And they get together, they decide that they want to have relations, even though Anastasia wants to have more of a relationship, but Christian Grey is too emotionally handicapped and he just wants to have sex. And it sort of talks about, well, it doesn't sort of talk about, it is all about the BDSM lifestyle and the dominant and the submissive person and pain / pleasure and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of explicit and graphic content in this book. So I wouldn't recommend this book for kids under, I don't know, the age of 15 or 13, 12 or something like that, because it talks a lot about some mature content, and I don't think that that would be appropriate for very young children, young teenagers. So definitely keep that in mind. So right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and say that I am going to give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. And I think me giving it a 3 out of 5 stars is pushing it a little bit. That's being maybe a little bit too generous, because I really did not like this book. I kind of feel like anybody could have written this book. I could have written this book. I am not into writing or journalism. I mean, the last time I wrote something like story-ish kind of was when I was about 9 or 12, and I feel like anybody could have written this book because the writing was so poor. It blew my mind. And when I say that this writing was so poor, what I mean by that is that it had so many repetitive phrases within the book. There are so many adjectives out there that a person can use to describe a certain situation or a certain feeling, but I feel like this author just used the same phrases and the same words. So that really bugged me. The fact that I got around to picking up these phrases and these words. Some of those words were, for example, deliciously. If she was talking about being sexually aroused or being excited, she would use the word deliciously. Some phrases that she used so often were phrases like holy hell or holy shit or oh my. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I saw the word oh my in this book. I feel like I should have gotten a highlighter and just highlighted these words so you could just see when I would do this how many times those words. So the writing style really bugged me. Something else that really annoyed me was the fact that the relationship between Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele wasn't very believable to me. The characters weren't very believable to me. They weren't very relatable. I didn't feel any connection between me and these characters. As a matter of fact, I didn't even care about these characters. That's how poorly that was done. And by the relationship between them, what I mean is that you start off with Anastasia going into Christian Grey's office and interviewing him, and then you go from them having breakfast and having tea or coffee in the morning the next day, and then you just fly to the other end of the spectrum and she ends up being at his house and meeting his parents. Like, I don't feel like that was very believable. I mean, in real life, when you have two people that don't know anything about each other, you see them calling each other on the phone constantly for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, texting, going on little dates here and there, but I don't feel like any of that happened throughout the period of time where they met and when she was at his house sleeping and meeting his parents. Another thing that really got on my nerves about this book was the fact that Anastasia, or I guess the author, it's the author, I guess, was the fact that Christian Grey was, we already know that at the beginning of the book he was portrayed as this really good looking guy, somewhat like a god, according to Anastasia and how she perceived him, and we got that at the beginning of the book. But for some reason I just felt like I was being hit over the head constantly with these facts and this description about him. It's like every time that she would see him or she would think about him, she was just drooling over him. And it's okay to do it maybe once, twice, maybe even 3 times, but when I see that same pattern all the time throughout the end of the book, it just gets to be really annoying. And that's another thing that I just did not like. Another thing that I didn't like was, and I actually did some research on this, I went on Barnes & Noble and I bought an erotic short story for about 99 cents because I wanted to compare and contrast this erotic novel to an actual erotic novel. And I knew that this was just a watered down, a very rated PG-13 version of what an erotic novel was supposed to be like. Because after I read that 99-cent short story, I was like, I knew it. I knew. And for the erotic scenes that were written in this story, like I said, I feel like they were squeaky clean in comparison to what I read before. I felt like if you're gonna write an erotic novel, you need to write an erotic novel. You can't be shy about talking about somebody's vagina or someone's penis. You can't be, coy about talking about sex scenes and being nasty and raunchy with it, because that's essentially what an erotic novel is. It's all of the dirty little naughty things that we think in our minds in a book. That's what it is. And I feel like it was so poorly executed that it made me skim through some of the scenes in the book, which is bad, which is something that I've never done before. I've never gotten bored of reading something and just skimmed through it and just skipped it. And that's something that I found myself doing while I was reading this book. It was just so like soft porn. You know when you watch a porno and they have the hardcore porn and the softcore porn where they only show you the woman's breasts but no penis and no vaginas? That's what I felt like I was reading, was softcore porn as opposed to hardcore porn, which is what I was expecting. Another thing that I really had a problem with was the fact that we didn't get very much background information on Christian Grey. I feel like the entire time throughout this story I had a big question mark about who he was and what he had experienced. And I think about 3 chapters before the end of the book is when we finally came to find out that he had a crack whore mom, or a crack mom, or something like that. I can't even remember. That's how much I was paying attention. But we finally found out that he had some issues with his birth mom, and we didn't get very much information about that after that. 3 chapters later, we still didn't know anything about that, and I don't know if she did that on purpose because she wanted to go more in depth about it within the other 2 books, but I feel like I feel like there should have been more information. I will say though that it did have its moments. It did have some, points where it was really good and it was quirky and it was fun. And some of the things that I found really entertaining were the emails that Christian Grey and Anastasia would send and receive to each other. And I liked it. I liked the fact that Anastasia could be so sarcastic and so witty, and that he could be so playful, which was something that he normally wasn't throughout the story, and I really did enjoy that. Another thing that I really did enjoy was Anastasia's subconscious and her inner goddess, who were so cute. I could just visualize some of the things that they would do and say throughout the story, and I felt like that was really cute and really executed. So, in a nutshell, I was not impressed with this book at all. And I feel so bad saying that, and I feel so bad voicing my opinion in such a negative way and kind of just, I guess, bashing the author, but I wasn't impressed with this book. I really had high expectations for this book because so many people had been talking about it and so many people had enjoyed it and so many people were raving about it that I really really had high expectations for it. And I don't know if some of these people had never read an erotic novel before and just thought that this was the best thing since sliced bread, but I'd never read any kind of erotic novel before this one, and I just thought I wasn't impressed, especially after buying this other book and reading it. I was just like, you know, and I mean, I love her enthusiasm, and I love the fact that she really did put a lot of thought into the content and a lot of, you know, creativity into it. I really liked the storyline and the concept of this book because I learned a lot of things about this BDSM lifestyle that I had no idea about, and I learned a lot of terminology that I had never heard of before. So I really liked that, but I just felt like it was really poorly executed, and I really am not interested in reading about what happens to these two characters in the next 2 books, because if you didn't capture me within the first 5 chapters, which within the first 5 chapters I was already over it within the first 5 chapters. So if you didn't capture me within the first 5 chapters and I really didn't love it within the first book, I'm not trying to find out what happens in book 2 or 3. So like I said, I'm giving this book a 3 out of 5. If you were to ask me if I would recommend this book to anyone else, I would probably say no, and I would probably go into a big tantrum and fit about why I wouldn't recommend it. So that's just my personal opinion. If you guys love this book, then hey, you guys love this book, but I definitely didn't. I hope you guys enjoyed my book review. I know it was really honest and open and kind of bashing in a way, but this is my honest opinion. I know some of you guys might not agree with it. Some of you guys might think I'm being a little bit too harsh, but that's just my personal opinion, and everyone is entitled to their own personal opinion. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!